Hey, what's up, y'all? How are you guys doing? Today, I'm going to take you guys through some terms, some metaphors, some verbiage, and some tools that I use as a coach to kind of break down scenarios in our games and tools to help us review and introduce us to kind of terms that we use in the academy a lot. So this video is meant for two purposes. One, it's to give you guys some sort of language to approach the game from so it can help you understand your own situations and your own games, but also as an introduction video for people joining the JS Academy to understand what I mean through some of the things I say. So this will help you guys if you guys are watching back previous VODs over on the Patreon, or if you get a review from me. These terms are likely to come up, and I want to make sure that we're all on the same page here. So I'm just going to run down some of the most commonly used terms. Now, quick disclaimer, most of these terms are taken from other coaches or even other fields. We have like chess analogies that I use quite a bit. So I'm just going to explain how I mean those in terms of league. I have a lot of terms I've taken from LS and Coach Curtis and Nathan Mott, all amazing coaches. Feel free to look them up. Not a lot of these are original, but let's go ahead and get into it. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is just make sure we understand basic wave management. Now I have some videos explaining basic wave management. So go watch those if we don't understand the ideas, but I mean, very generally here, a slow push is when you have more minions. Usually when we're talking about wave management, we can just count the casters. There's two things that's really important. It's like the difference in minions, predominantly the caster minions, and the position of the wave, right? So here, the wave is relatively in the middle, and the blue side has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 casters. The red side has 1, 2, 3. This is slow pushing this way. When you have a slow push and the positions on the enemy side, you also have priority, or roam priority, or prio, as a lot of league players will say. And this just means that, let's say my jungle is playing up here on this crab, I move to it faster because I'm closer to it, right? I have more access to this river than Kassadin does. I have priority. Now, the difference between a slow push and a crash, or a fast push and a crash are kind of the same thing. It's just how I handle this situation. If I want to crash it, I'll use all of my resources to get this under as fast as possible. I'll auto attack as much as I can. I'll use my spells as hard as I can to hit the wave, right? Since I'm playing Victor here, I'll hit E on all these minions. That's a fast push. If I want to slow push, I will just last hit. Now, again, I have a video breaking down why you would do different things at different times, but this is just what the words mean. Now, a bounce, actually, let me introduce one more concept. When we're talking about waves, oftentimes we'll identify the current situation as kind of wave A, right? And we'll say the next wave is wave B, right? So if this is wave A, the next wave that is coming will be wave B, and the next one after that, C, and so forth and so forth. So in this situation, what will often happen in the academy is like, we'll say, okay, so this is wave A. And a wave A, we know that we have a slow push and we know that we have priority. We can decide what we want to do on B. And now if on B, we decide to crash the next one that comes, that means the wave after that is going to bounce back. And this is the next term I want to talk about, a bounce back or a bounced wave. This is the wave after a crash, which is actually this wave, right? You guys can kind of see how this happened. This wave is now, we have an even amount of minions, but since it's bouncing off this tower and we're closer to the enemy, it's actually slow pushing the other way, right? And we call this the bounce. This is also the even minion rule, right? If the minions are even, we have an even amount of caster minions. And again, we can count here, 1, 2, 3 to 1, 2, 3. We're even in casters. This will slow push this way because we're closer to his tower. His next wave on wave D, now if we're following the sequence, his minions will reinforce quicker. He'll build up 5 or 6 caster minions to my 3 on the next wave, and he'll build up this really nice slow push. Now, this is really significant because on this bounced wave is when you tend to get a lot of space back. And now as we continue to talk about more wave stuff, on these bounced waves is where you buy, pockets of expression for the first time in a losing matchup. Now, what pockets of expression are good spots to stand that are off the wave that allow you to have lots of options, and they're given to you. They're called pockets because they're spots that you have to kind of buy through the wave, right? So if you have priority, and again, we have priority here because we have the wave pushing and we have this space, we can now stand in these aggressive pockets because of this priority. Assuming that I have vision up here so I can lean safely, right? That's another term. Leaning just means standing on the side of the lane where you have vision. If we're able to lean properly, we can now stand up in this pocket of expression And now we get to apply lots of pressure on this guy while staying safe from the gank, while being very hard to hit with skill shots because we can move in all directions, while being off our minion wave, right? You don't want to be on your minion wave because if they do have an AoE spell, like Kassadin has one, Kassadin, is it his W or his E? I forget, the little AoE thing. Or let's say you're playing against a Lux with her E or whatever, RQ. There's lots of little AoE spells that you don't want to be on the wave for. So these pockets of expression are off the wave in deep, aggressive spots that allow you to really express aggression. Now, another term here that's really, really important is called minion negotiation. And this is a term where it's a term we use to illustrate the fact that we should trade over something. We shouldn't just trade for free. So in this situation, me and Victor are paying attention to every single minion that's getting low. And we're saying, look, I'm going to do something every time a minion gets low. I know that my minion, here I'm the Victor, I know that my minion's getting low, and I know that Kassadin wants to step up. So I'm going to give him the choice. I'm going to say, look, if you step up, I'm going to trade with you, and I'm going to just be up. I'm going to be up a bunch of health. I'm going to be up a trade. If you don't step up, then I'm going to be able to last at the minions. You're not. I'm going to create a resource lead. This is a really, really nice way to put yourself in a win-win position. No matter what Kassadin does here, he's in a losing position. This is how you snowball leads. When you're in a winning position, this is how you really snowball it into a hard winning game. And we'll talk more about that later. That's what I kind of call the win-win. That's the situations you want to put yourself in, right? That's also called minion negotiation. Now on the flip side, when I go to last hit this caster minion, Kassadin will know that I'm busy. He may be able to walk up and Q this minion or Q this minion while I'm busy last hitting this one and this one. So whenever minions are low, that should be a sign to you, hey, they are preoccupied with this minion. We should see if we can trade or buy space or cast a spell to get our own minion or manage the wave or something. That's minion negotiation. Now, another rudimentary term I have here is offense versus defense. Basically, it's another way to express priority. If we have priority, and we talked about what that was in the last slide, we could say that you have offense because the wave, especially in the early levels, right? Especially pre-6, the wave really dictates where you can stand. It dictates how strong your trades are. It dictates everything. It dictates where you can move. Everything revolves around the minions. So if you have a minion advantage, you tend to be on offense. This is particularly true in the side lanes. So if we're playing top or bottom, it's extra true because the lane is longer, so you can extend the amount of time your offense is on. Or mid lane, you can really only slow build 2, maybe 3 waves. So that is most of the wave control stuff. Now we're going to talk about proactive and reactive cooldowns. This is a really important concept because reactive cooldowns are cooldowns that are expensive. So that means they cost a lot in terms of either they have long cooldowns, they cost a lot of mana, or they're really punishing to miss. Reactive cooldowns are expensive. They are impactful, right? That's, I guess, another reason why they're expensive is because they're impactful. And oftentimes they're kind of like your safety or one of your win conditions for the lane. So here we have a Lux versus a Nivea. Lux's reactive cooldown would be her Q. So we know it is a reactive cooldown, but what does that actually mean? It means you can't use it to create space. You want to hold it to react to something, right? And ideally with our reactive cooldowns, we know what we're reacting to before the game starts. So in this situation, the Lux versus the Anivia, you will only use your snare. The Lux will only use her snare when the Anivia steps up to cast out the Anivia E, or when she's getting ganked, or when the Anivia has mispositioned, right? So you have a couple signs in your head that if those happen, you can cast out your reactive spell. If they don't happen, you can never cast it. Another really good example I like to use is Ahri versus Zed. This is a matchup where they both have a really, really important reactive cooldown. Ahri's is her charm. Zed's is his shadow, his W. And Ahri cannot cast her charm until Zed has W'd or until Zed has commit to an all-in or ulted post 6, right? You cannot use your charm unless he's done one of those things or he messed up positionally. That's another thing you could react to. If somebody really messes up positionally, you can use your reactive cooldown there. Zed can't use his W until Ahri steps into a good range. Ideally, Ari uses her W, so she doesn't have any movement spells, so we can W to punish that as the Z, that kind of thing. You cannot throw out these spells for no reason, because if you miss them, you lose too much pressure, right? This is often one of the first things that we talk about with people who come in the academy. It's you're too loose with your spells, especially your reactive, expensive spells. You cannot cast them until something happens, right? Now, proactive spells, they're kind of just the opposite. They're spells that you can throw out, right? So in this matchup, Zed can throw out his Q because the Q isn't really that impactful. And if he misses it, it'll be right back up. And Ari can throw out her Q and her W. Now, granted, this is a spectrum, right? Let's say on the left here, you have kind of proactive cooldowns. And on the right, you have reactive cooldowns. It's a spectrum of how important it is to hold the spell. RAE would be like here. ZW, his shadow, would be like here. Where REQ would be here. REW, ZQ, right? So it's not kind of black and white, proactive, reactive. It's more of a spectrum. But the thing that's important, and the reason we talk about it like this, is it's basically saying, be careful of how you use your spells. If you use them incorrectly, you give the opponent a lot of space to punish you, a lot of time, a lot of space, a lot of time to punish you, right? Opportunity to punish you. And the more important your cooldown is, the more opportunity they gain when you miss your spell. The higher the opportunity cost, right? So we have to learn to hold our reactive spells. Next, I just want to talk about some chess analogies. I actually already mentioned a couple of these. I like to talk about situations in League, kind of like almost chess situations. And I think chess is a good kind of parallel because chess is similar where your opening is really, really important. In League, it's the same thing. I have a very lane phase first mentality. If you have a good lane phase, you're just up income. The rest of the game's easy. Same thing as chess. If you know the opening better than your opponent, you're going to come out in a better spot when the game actually starts, right? Quote unquote. That is already a good thing. Like your openers are important. Now, I like to also talk about winning lines. Like, a winning line in this game for Lux would be to use her Q reactively, right? That's kind of a way that we would bring that up. Or if we're talking about, if we talk about roaming bottom, we would compare those two lines, right? It's like paths down a road. If we roam bottom, this and this and this happens. That's one line. If we stay mid, we get the wave, we get the plates, and this happens. Which line is more winning? Right? That's a way that I like to think about League plays. Now, another thing in chess is you kind of have positional advantages and you have material advantages. If you're playing chess and you take somebody's piece, you take their pawn, you take their, and I don't know a lot about chess, but I know enough. If you take somebody's rook, whatever, you gain a certain amount of material for that. It's not the same as if you have control over the middle of the board. You may not actually be up pieces, but you have more space. Maybe you have more development. You're up a position. Right? Those are two different things. In League, it's the same thing. Here, Lux is up the position because she has priority. She has more minions on her wave. She hit level 2 first. And now her goal is, how can we turn this winning position into winning material? And we actually talked about that earlier, where when we're in a winning position, we want to really go hard on that minion negotiation and say, look, on this minion, I'm going to make sure, Anivia, when you want to go for this minion, I'm going to make sure you pick something to lose. Either I'm going to gain a resource advantage, I'm going to be up even more position, and then I can keep doing that negotiation with you, or you're going to lose the minion, and I'm going to be up some sort of material, and that's significant. The last little chess analogy I like to use is turns, especially for mid laners and junglers and supports, and top laners, actually for everybody. This is more of a wave management term. Before you want to do things, you have to kind of deal with your wave first. You have to crash this wave. You have to buy yourself a turn. Right? So oftentimes we talk about timers, like roam timers. If you want to roam, you need a timer. Well, to get a roam timer, you need to crash a wave. That's another way I just call these turns, right? You need to crash a wave, and then you have time until the next wave gets there. That's a roam timer, also known as a turn. If you crash like a cannon wave, you can get a bigger turn, right? So these chess analogies I think are very helpful to kind of talk about League and talk about positions like that. So those are those. And finally, I have some miscellaneous terms and sayings. This is kind of the last slide. These are sayings or generalizations that I just want to clarify or make sure everybody knows about. The first one here is blocks. Now, League blocks, This is something that I actually took from Curtis. It's a system of playing. It's where you play in a certain amount of games. And then after the games, you take a break. And maybe during this system, you do a review. It's a system of playing. That's the best way to describe this. Now, usually we talk about this in the context of a 3 block, which is just a block of time where you play 3 games. Now, in the academy, typically what I do is I'll play a game, I'll review, I'll play a game, I review, I play a game, I review, I take a break. That's my system of playing. That is a 3 block. Some people do different kind of block systems. I know some people like 2 blocks, some people like 4 blocks, but we're very big on having some sort of system to approaching the game so we can have some sort of, respect for solo queue and we can make sure we're using our time efficiently. So when we talk about blocks, when we talk about a 3 block, that's what we're talking about. Next thing here is the loser's mental versus the winner's mental. This is kind of playing to lose versus playing to win. Now there's a big difference there because when you're playing to not lose, and I misspoke here and I miswrote. The loser's mentality is playing to not lose. Now, this is a very reactive play style. It's a play style where you try to not push your boundaries at all. You wait for the enemy to mess up. And it's a very good way to get out of low elo, right? It's a very good way to get out of bronze, to get out of silver, if you can just kind of control your character better and you can be patient. But it's a very bad way to learn. You do not learn anything by waiting for the enemy to mess up. You learn by you messing up, by pushing your boundaries and then kind of adapting how strong you are and knowing things through that way, right? Oftentimes, players who get hard stuck for a long time cruise up to a rank. Let's say they cruise up to Platinum 4 and then they just get really hard stuck there. Oftentimes, it's because they're playing with this loser's mental. And when people stop making mistakes that they can't see as clearly, and they're not able to punish them as easily, they're not learning, they never break through that plateau because we're not playing to get a win, or we're not playing for ourselves to snowball, we're playing for the enemy to mess up. So the winner's mental is a mental for learning and progressing. The loser's mental is a way that we either pull out when you're really far behind in a game, and there's no chance of you winning because you already messed up until they mess up, or it's a thing we do when you're just kind of more comfortable with your character than the enemies and you kind of just cruise out of low elo on. Okay, the minion first mental. This is kind of what I mentioned this earlier a little bit, I think, and this is just saying we always have to deal with our minions first. League of Legends is a game that revolves around income. It's incredibly important that we talk about income. That's what everything comes down to. Gold, XP, that stuff. Right now, minions are the most easily available. They're the most common form of income. So we always deal with our wave first. This is the root of everything. It's the root of when you can roam good. It's the root of good back timers. It's the root of good trade timers. It's the root of setting up good plays. It's the root of good tempo. Everything is rooted in your minion wave. So we always have a minion first mental. Super important. Taking your medicine. This is another thing. This is kind of more of just a common saying, but I say this a lot. It's always better to take a small loss, kind of just right now, humbly, than it is to risk a big one, right? So a lot of people they'll take a bad trade and they'll feel stuck in lane and they'll be like, oh, but if I go back, I lose a wave. But it's if you don't go back, you'll lose a wave and you get dove, or you lose the next 3 waves because you're getting pushed out so much, or you mess up your team's tempo. It's better to go back now, take the bad wave and take your medicine, get back into the game, rather than to extend the amount of time that you're useless because you already messed up. Another one here is prediction precedes punishment. This is kind of a higher end mechanical / mental mind game thing. This is kind of a saying that affirms we have to aim to be creative. And if you know what somebody's going to do, it is always punishable, right? If you know what somebody's going to do, it is always punishable. So step 1, figure out what other people are going to do. Step 2, learn how to punish it, right? So if you know what the opponent's going to do, you can punish it. And vice versa is true as well, right? I get a lot of plat players, a lot of diamond players who start to kind of fall into these really predictable patterns. Well, it's like, dude, it's really easy to just punish you for that. You can't have that happen. One last thing that I wanted to add on to this, which actually kind of goes hand in hand with a very similar idea, is oppositional empathy. Now, this is a term that I believe I invented. I think this may be the only term I invented here, but it's basically a way to say you have to figure out how to get into your opponent's shoes. So sometimes I'll give Academy students the learning objective of oppositional empathy. learn how to think in your opponent's head, learn what they're thinking, learn how to get in their head. Ways you can do this is watching reviews from the opponent's perspective. Oftentimes we watch our own reviews from our perspective, right? Because we're playing it, but actually, what is your opponent thinking? That may help you figure out how they're predictable, so how you can punish them. Figure out what their champion wants, what their team wants. All of that kind of stuff is really helpful. So this is just a quick rundown of a lot of terms and a lot of verbiage we use here in the JS Academy. If you guys are interested in joining, of course, check out the description. Or if you're interested in getting coaching from me, these are terms that I am likely to use. These are terms that I've taken from other coaches. Again, I mentioned that at the beginning of the video, so definitely check them out. If you guys have any questions, let me know. And even if you guys have no intention of getting any coaching or anything, I hope that you can take these terms and use them to kind of create some order in the chaos that is solo queue. Appreciate you guys. Comment your favorite term in terms of League of Legends, whether it's some term that was in the video or if it's a term that you wanted to add. Comment it below. Comment 22 minutes because you guys made it to the end of a JS video, and I will go give you guys a heart. I appreciate y'all. I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a blessed night. Peace.